session, which is going to be moderated by Said Bey from 50 law firm, and I'd also like to thank his law firm for being one of the main sponsors. Again, they've been sponsoring these events now for a number of years, and we really appreciate their contribution. So thank you for that. I mean, we're looking at the Turkish economy and energy sector in the wake of COVID-19, and how we move towards sort of carbon CO2 neutrality, which is a big subject that is on everybody's agenda pretty much. I think the climate change and carbon neutral is really, governments are beginning to take this very seriously. So it'd be interesting to see what our panelists have to say, particularly in the light of COVID. So I'm going to hand over to Said Bey to introduce his panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Said Yılmaz. As Chris mentioned, I will be moderating this forum, the Turkish energy sector in the wake of COVID-19, and where we stand on the path of carbon neutrality. As Chris mentioned, I mean, this is a quite ambitious agenda put together by the states all around the world, in particular by the EU, saying that they're aiming for a zero carbon neutrality by 2050. So hopefully it will be a very interesting topic for everyone. So please welcome our panelists. I'm just going to give a minute to introduce themselves. Yiğit, we can start with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Yiğit Bilmiş. I'm working in Garanti Bank as the head of energy project finance team. Said, you may go on with Selahattin Bey, I guess. I will introduce Garanti Bank when I talk in detail.
Sure.
At the moment, the chairman of the steering committee of Shura Energy Transition Center, at the same time the advisory committee. Shura Energy Transition Center is a non-governmental, non-profit organization in the umbrella of the Sabancı University of Turkey, and sponsored or established by the European Climate Foundation and Agora Energiewende from Germany. This is a think tank working on, in general, working on the decarbonization of the Turkish energy sector mainly. And it has been established 3 years ago. And in the meantime, we have published close to 50 reports, some of them very voluminous, some of them just some papers. And by the way, Korkut Bey is also one of our advisory board members. And I think Shura in this short time of 3 years has made a name as the independent think tank, being accepted by governmental authorities, by the private sector, by other NGOs. So we are trying to contribute to the decarbonization in general, but more specifically on the energy sector.
Thank you very much, Selahattin Bey. Korkut Bey, would you like to share a brief introduction?
Sure. Thank you very much, Said Bey. My name is Korkut Öztürkmen. I'm working in the energy sector more than 25 years. I'm currently executive board member of Aksa Energy. Aksa Energy is a vertically integrated energy company from gas distribution and trading to power distribution, trading, and power generation. We are also active in the power generation business internationally, not only for Turkish market. And we are also one of the leading gensets companies based in Turkey. I am also holding the vice chairman position of Turkish electricity power generators. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we can, I think, start with the questions. So my first question will be directed to Yiğit Emre. I mean, as you know, I mean, Turkey has a really ambitious renewable energy agenda with an aim to at least generate 50% of the power from the renewables. So where do you think we stand in decreasing dependence on the fossil fuels and making the best use of renewable energy sources? And what policy actions have proven to be successful in the past? The green energy investment could be further incentivized.
Sure. Thanks, Said. I mean, as Guarantee Bank, we are not only providing financing to energy projects, but we also provide our know-how and make projections regarding the electricity demand, supply, and prices. That's why I can say that we work as an advisor, like an advisor in the market. And depending on those projections, we provide advisory services to our clients, but we also utilize those projections in order to build up our strategy, the financing strategy, and to build up our portfolio in energy financing. And when we look at the past of the energy market in Turkey, since the beginning of 2000s, we see a real investment attack in the sector. I mean, the investment appetite was so high that the total installed capacity was close to 30,000 megawatts in 2002, whereas we reached almost 96,000 megawatts currently. And when you look at the breakdown of that huge increase, you see that renewables almost took the half of it. And when you look at the renewables figures, the total renewables installed capacity was at 12,000 megawatts in 2002. But currently we are close to 50,000, and the 12,000 in 2002 was almost coming from solely hydros. And when you look at the solar and wind side, it was zero in 2002, and currently we reached almost 15,000 megawatts in solar and wind. And that's why we can say that, I mean, Turkey increased its installed capacity a lot since the beginning of 2000s, and the biggest share was taken by the renewables. And when you these are the overall figures, and when you look at the trends in the last 5 years, you see that the dominance of renewables increased a lot. When you look at the installed capacity increase in 2020, you see that the increase figure reached like 5,000 megawatts, including the unlicensed ones. We see the increase as 4.9 gigawatts, and almost 95% of it is coming from renewables. And we can say that based on this fact, I mean, the investment appetite in renewables is still there in the market. And renewables are going to be growing in the future as well. And when you look at the driving factors that enables that increase in the renewables, we can say that, I mean, the biggest reason of that increase is the existence of feed-in tariff. Because when you look at the figures, I mean, in the last couple of years, we can say that there's almost no investment in thermals or in any merchant business, but the investment appetite in feed-in tariffs are still there and growing. And the sole reason, in our opinion, of that is the existence of feed-in tariff. And based on this fact, we can say that, I mean, the current feed-in tariff mechanism worked well in the past, and it's working well currently. And in order to grow the renewable capacity further, I mean, the only thing we need to do is to modify the current mechanism based on the current conditions and utilize it. And based on that, I mean, based on that mechanism, we think we will be able to grow renewables further in the future. And in 2021, we will see a similar increase in the total installed capacity. We expect like, again, 4 gigawatts of installed capacity in renewables will be becoming online. And in order to keep this pace, we need to support the renewables. And the key here is the existence of a feed-in tariff and actually the existence of a floor price mechanism in order to enable the financings.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just moving on that one. I mean, Selahattin Bey, as just Chris briefly mentioned about the climate resilience and transition to low or zero carbon emission is at the top of the government agendas. So where do you think, in your view, what direction does the energy sector evolve and how do you evaluate Turkey's role in the global energy transition?
Thank you, Said Bey. Let me first just take a step back how our energy system evolved in the last centuries, and then take it from there to looking into today and the future. We know that for the last 2 centuries or more, our societies, our economies, our way of life, our business models were driven by the improvements introduced by the Industrial Revolution 250 years ago. And still until today, we have been, or let me say until 20 years ago, we have been continuing on this path with all these institutions, governances, and also daily life patterns. Now we know that in the last 20 years, this in general, I'm not talking only about the energy sector, but in people call it Industry 4.0, some people call it Third Industrial Revolution, and so on and so forth. But the methods or the way of doing business, the way of living, and so on and so forth, which were determined by the Industrial Revolution, going a disruptive change. If we look at the largest companies of the world, for example, we are seeing that in the last 10, 20 years, this has changed a lot. The world is developing from big asset-heavy companies and their business models towards a more innovation-led structures, which are mainly fueled by the developments on the information and communication technologies. So, and looking at the energy sector, energy has always been one of the substantial drivers of human life, in fact. And with the Industrial Revolution, the importance of energy even increased, and which was based on mainly fossil fuels, the use of fossil fuels, and the share of electricity has been increasing throughout all these centuries, and the electricity was generated mainly based on fossil fuels or hydropower, as already mentioned, in big central installations, big power plants, and was transmitted and distributed to the points where it was needed. So this was again a very fossil fuel heavy industry. Now, looking at the developments in the last, say, around 20 years, this is changing dramatically. There are 2 major technological improvements which cause this change. One of them is the development, again, of the information and communication technologies, which enable much more coordination and so on and so forth between very different points of generation or consumption. And the other one is, of course, the renewables, especially wind and solar, getting more and more competitive that today they have reached a level they can, competition-wise, beat any fossil fuel installation globally. And so this, and looking again at the energy sector in general, the energy sector has always been driven, looking for answers for three main challenges. One of them was the security of supply. The second one is the affordability or the price of it, if you will. And the third one, becoming more and more important, and today maybe being the most important factor, is the environmental sustainability of the energy sector. And so with these changes I just mentioned, the answers to those challenges are also changing, or have dramatically changed. So the new mantra is decarbonization, decentralization, digitization, and in order to go with the Ds, we call it democratization, which means that the consumers who were totally passive players in the past in the market, more and more active with their choices of their suppliers and so on and so forth, but also becoming producers at the same time. If you look at the decentralized applications, rooftop, and so on and so forth. So these 4 Ds, as we call it, are now driving the answers to these 3 challenges. And this is what we call the energy transition. And the main drivers, main pillars of this transition are twofold. One of them is, as already mentioned, renewable generation, which is becoming more and more competitive, or has become the most competitive generating power. And the second one is the energy efficiency, which plays an important role in this energy transition to those 4 D targets, and which is in most cases the cheapest way to get enough energy, enough electricity. And this again is enabled, or in many cases enabled by the developments on the information and communication technologies. Now, today we can do much more when you think of Internet of Things, IoT, or smart homes, grids, and so on and so forth. We have vast possibilities of saving energy and increasing the efficiency. And these again push 2 trends. One of them is electrification, meaning replacing other forms of energy use, so directly using fossil fuels, for example, with electricity generated from renewables. And the other one is the use of green hydrogen instead of fossils as a fuel. So the hydrogen generated by renewable resources. So this is the trend globally in the energy sector. And if we have a look into Turkey, Turkey has joined this transition trend. Already, also again, something like 15, 20 years introduction of the new market mechanism, as Yiğit mentioned, the feed-in tariffs, and so on and so forth. And Yiğit already summarized what Turkey in the recent years has achieved in terms of renewables, and is projected to go further in the next years, or in the years to come. I just want to add one very, very recent point to that, that in the Turkish electricity generation, yesterday, wind alone had, for the first time, a share of more than 20%. In yesterday's generation in Turkey was more than 20%, 21.4% actually, was based on wind alone. And Turkey is also making steps, considerable steps in the energy efficiency area. There is a National Energy Efficiency Action Plan in force since for 3 years now, which covers the period 2017 to 2023, and which targets saving on primary energy of 14% within this period. Shura has also done comprehensive work on energy efficiency, among others, which have been on renewables and so on and so forth. And this shows that until 2030, on top of the targets of the Energy Efficiency Action Plan, another more than 10% energy efficiency increase, whereby we take only competitive applications, which means were lower than the expected prices of electricity. So, which are feasible projects, can lead to another 10% decrease of the energy use until 2030. Just let me add one word. In addition to the drivers of the answering these three challenges globally, which lead to this energy transition, Turkey has specific economic challenges, which also support this energy transition, this transition to higher efficiency and renewables. There are two challenges of Turkey. The current account deficit. The Turkish economy is one of the main problems of the Turkish economy is the current account deficit, and which also, to a large extent, stems from the high energy import bill of Turkey. Both renewables and energy efficiency are local resources, and their deployment will and is decreasing the energy import bill. And the second one is Turkish exports are heavily, or the main export market of Turkey is Europe. And looking at the developments on the part of the European Green Deal, and also the declared intention to introduce a border carbon adjustment by the EU, will or can put the Turkish industries and services sectors under pressure unless Turkey undertakes these steps towards a low carbon energy system. So, all in all, Turkey is also developing in a fast manner in the way of energy transition.
Thank you very much, Selahattin Bey. It's a very good throughout summary of the past, present, and future. And moving on, Korkut Bey, I mean, we all mentioned about the appealing factor of the Turkish energy market. So, given that despite all global uncertainties, Turkey continues to be the global energy market compared to its peers and gets considerable attention, as we discussed, from international investors. So, in your opinion, which aspects of the Turkish energy market has so far been attractive for multinational players? And what would you think would be the key appealing factor to invest in Turkey energy projects?
Thank you, Said Bey. I mean, first of all, I think in the future, history will talk about COVID-19 pandemic as a tipping point for all humanity, affecting many aspects of the way how we live on this planet. And in one sense, I agree with Selahattin Bey. We are going through a transformation, and this is a kind of disruption, first deteriorating the markets, but then giving a new direction for the betterment of quality of life and market dynamics. Actually, similar to the other markets, Turkey also had a severe hit during this pandemic, and there has been a quick and substantial demand decrease almost in all types of power products or energy products, gas, fuel oil, gasoline, and power. And we have already seen that the energy economy, not only in Turkey, but all through the world, has paused for a while. And maybe this means a loss of 3 years of growth at least, or maybe more, 3 to 5 years of growth. So this is actually provided also an opportunity for all of us and for all companies to think about where we are coming from and where we should proceed. I remember a couple of years ago, most of the biggest energy companies, when you look at their strategy scenarios, they were talking about growth in terms of volume, growth in terms of, let's say, profits, and also the coverage of the regions in the world. Yes, most of them are environmental sensitive, and they were also looking at the alternative fuels and renewable energy options, but you could see those highlights down on the strategy paper, not on the top. But when you look at the websites of those big companies, you see that their targets have been changed, and they are now talking about lowering emissions, increasing renewable energy, and trying to be more, let's say, creative in terms of doing energy business, not only concentrating on the production or commodity trading. Companies also started to look for some alternative technologies and some services to create differentiation. Turkey, being hardly hit with this pandemic, is one of the, again, rare countries which bounded back quicker than the others. I mean, during the pandemic, we have seen that 18 to 20% at least power consumption decrease. Also, the collection rates of the distribution companies decreased accordingly, and there has been also a cash flow problem in almost all of our energy companies in Turkey. But still, when we look at the end of year results, we see that this growth has been positive lately, bringing the total consumption more or less to the similar levels of 2019. And as you might be following from IMF latest report, economists also start to talk about a bright future for Turkish economy for 2021, and they're talking about 6% GDP, which is, I mean, very considerable. And if that happens, this will directly, of course, impact the energy market, because usually energy market grows a little bit higher than the GDP. Usually you would expect 1 or 0.5% higher than GDP. So from looking this perspective, despite volatility of this consumption levels and the price shocks, I mean, this is unfortunately still a reality. I think that Turkish energy market is still an attractive one with growth potential. Although there is oversupply capacity from the power side, the generation mix still needs to be reshuffled, especially with growing renewable energy capacity. We might expect still this year growth in solar. And as you know, due to the feed-in tariff period finalization as of mid of this year, we will also see a rapid increase in wind energy capacity. And this will, I still think that although there is still ambiguity how the feed-in tariff mechanism will be after that, Turkey still constitutes a huge potential for international investors, especially for solar and for distributed PV sector. Another area in energy would be the exploration and production. As you know, Turkey has found a significant reserve in Black Sea, and there are also ongoing research operations. And everybody's talking about a huge discovery. And I think that with this additional investment and additional, let's say, product coming into the Turkish market or maybe towards Europe, international players, I know, has already shown interest to take equity or to provide some kind of, let's say, services for this new reserve project, reserve development projects. Power distribution sector is another area, I think, where we can expect some foreign partnerships. There might be some M&A, let's say, transaction opportunities in that sector, especially after the latest tariff regime, which has been announced by EMRA by the end of the year. I think with solid forecasts of those companies, we might see some interest coming from energy funds or some foreign players. In addition to that, I think the energy market in Turkey needs to be consolidated. I mean, there are lots of small, various players, and they are not actually, energy is not their main business. They're looking at other businesses and bringing energy along. And this is actually distorting the market power, and also the economies of scale for those companies. And I believe that we will see some kind of consolidation during this year onwards. And this will be also supported and triggered by the vast amount of low interest money flowing across the world outside Turkey, looking for opportunities to get in.
Okay. Thank you, Korkut Bey.
So that's, in summary, what I should say.
Sure. Thank you very much. I mean, it's all very helpful. So just, picking on the financing wise, I will direct a question to you, Temre. There's an appetite there, and, how do you assess the availability of external financing for the Turkish energy market? Would you like to, elaborate on that one? So what, the sponsors or, the agencies should do in order to attract more financing to the country?
Yeah, sure. I know we are running out of time. That's why I will touch on the most important couple of points here. I mean, before jumping on the financing side, I would like to mention the supply and demand balance in Turkey, because when you look at the supply and demand balance figures, you see that currently the market is suffering from a severe excess supply, which is caused by the low demand growth figures in the recent years. And when you look at the figure, it's almost 50%, what you see on the reserve margin levels. And based on this fact, I mean, from one point of view, one may think that, okay, we have sufficient installed capacity why are we building further onto that one and approach renewables from that perspective? And from that perspective, it seems okay to try experimental financing structures or experimental support structures renewables. But from where we see this issue is that renewables should not be considered as a way to meet the demand, electricity demand in Turkey. I mean, Turkey currently has sufficient installed capacity to meet its demand, but renewables are a more powerful tool here. I mean, with renewables, you can fight against the current account deficit. With renewables, you can increase the employment figures. I mean, with renewables, you can attract the foreign, the foreign equity from abroad in order to, build up the foreign reserves. That's why, renewables should be supported here. And when you look at the external appetite on investment in renewables, it purely depends on the support scheme we will provide them. So far, the support scheme was denominated in foreign currency, and that drove the appetite from the foreign investors. But if we are going to talk about a Turkish lira denominated support scheme, that will for sure hinder the appetite in the foreign investors. But from a financing point of view, whether it's foreign or local sponsor, it doesn't matter for us. The most important issue from the financing point of view is the existence of a floor price mechanism, because commercial banks took merchant risk in the past, and we do not have a good memory on those.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. As you said, we are conscious of time. Sadat Bey, can I, very briefly ask your views, in which ways COVID-19 stimulus packages could be used towards transitioning the energy economy into a more sustainable one? You just briefly mentioned in your first speech, but just, can we have briefly summarize that as well?
So I will try to make it as short as possible. If somebody wants to dive deeper into that, also to this topic of COVID-19 stimulus packages and so on and so forth, there is a Shura website. As we see around the world, especially in developed economies, there are many stimulus packages for reviving the economy after COVID-19 or during COVID-19 are being put in place. And up to now, close to 50% of these stimulus packages, they underline or target the energy transition investments globally. And the IEA has reported that these stimulus packages continued or a doubling of actual investments into energy transition between 2021 and 23 would cause the global GDP to grow by additional 1% and create 9 million sustainable jobs. This is also valid for Turkey. And in the stimulus packages, we need to look at dedicating a major part of these packages to the energy transition investments, namely renewables and energy efficiency, which will create sustainable jobs, will contribute to increasing our GDP, but also at the same time help avoiding the risks defined by the border carbon adjustment. And with this, we can avoid to investing in technologies which will be stranded before their economic life ends. Because we are seeing in the global development that some technologies will, be it paid back or not, will not survive for decades. And just one last point to that, Yiğit Bey already mentioned certain items which need to be there to go further for Turkey in the on this transition path. What I think is we definitely need a long-term energy transition plan with defined dates, defined auctions, defined feed-in tariff mechanisms, and so on and so forth, in order to give the investors the possibility of being able to predict mid and long term, and so decide for investments. I think this is one of the urgent needs of the Turkish energy sector, to come up with a long-term energy transition program, which then will be followed, which then will be realized as it is promised. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Selahattin Bey. My last question, I'm conscious of time. I think we are already past, but just very briefly to, Korkut Bey, from your perspective, apart from Turkey, what does the, future hold for the Turkish investors outbound energy investments? Which markets look the most promising? Just very briefly, apart from Turkey. Korkut Bey, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry for that. Thank you very much, Said Bey. Actually, when we talk about investment opportunities outside of Turkey in the energy business, we don't see too many energy companies looking for some investment opportunities around Turkey or internationally. There are very few companies, and AXA is one of them. But when we talk about construction contracts or EPC contracts, I think we see that Turkish construction companies are very active in many countries. And due to complexity of the projects, management of resources in difficult environments, and competitive pricing, coming with the right quality gives priority to Turkish companies, and this is really brilliant. I mean, we follow many Turkish companies are having multi-million-dollar projects. But I think we need to make a differentiation. I mean, EPC and energy business are two different things, or construction or energy business are two different things. And those two businesses need different mindsets. From my point of view, energy companies first should look for consolidation opportunities within the country, supporting a solid balance sheet with financial strength. And then the second step should be looking for investment options outside of the country. And while doing this, they need to develop their engineering, planning, and risk management skills. Because when you are investing outside of Turkey, you are going to a new country. There are new set of rules, new dynamics, new demand profiles, and or contractual backgrounds, and so on and so forth. So you need to make a full-fledged risk analysis before having a decision or making a decision. Having done that, I think there are two main choices for those companies who want to invest outside of Turkey. The first one would be the group of countries where there is an established market, energy market, with certain reliable market forecasts and a bilateral contract market where the rules do not change frequently and where you can more or less rely on the long-term dynamics of the market. And this is, I mean, you cannot find those markets, of course, too often, and this would be mainly the European Union countries. So I think European Union countries still constitute a good potential, especially for this renewable and energy transition areas for Turkish markets, for Turkish companies to look for investment opportunities. The second option would be, of course, the countries either where there's a strong economic structure, high GDP growth, and or power demand growth or power or energy requirement in an emergency manner. And for those markets, then you should again, be very selective, and you should seek for long-term PPAs with the right jurisdiction and with the right counter guarantee mechanisms. As AXA, we have been pursuing a similar strategy, and so far we have reached to successful results and managed to bring the right power supply solutions to the countries, especially in Africa and Asia. Yes, this has been a difficult journey so far, and it is being already a difficult journey still, but I strongly encourage not only the EPC or construction companies, but the energy companies as well, to consider the energy sector as a worldwide or universal stage where they can set up their organizational structures and organizational strength. And I think there's tremendous opportunity around.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. I mean, we are already, I think, past the time, so...
Actually, we have a bit of time. I just want to mention one thing, particularly on that subject that Korkut was talking about in terms of foreign investors. Now, UK Export Finance, British Exim Bank, for better of another term, has really focused on Turkey and the Turkish construction sector, particularly in energy. And several transactions have already been done on the energy sector with Turkish construction companies in the Middle East, and I think there are some others in North Africa. But Enka have been very active there. They're building a power plant in Iraq. So my advice would be, if there are Turkish construction companies who are looking to get into the energy sector or already in the energy sector, and they're looking to do projects or bid for projects outside Turkey, then the UK Export Finance would be a good call to make, because there is a budget there. And I just want to make the point that the UK government are very keen to support Turkish contractors, particularly in the energy sector. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's always good to hear other support external financing sources for Turkey. I think so. I think it will be end of our panel. Many thanks for the insightful discussions. Obviously, I mean, this is a subject that can be discussed by this in particular. This is a very hot topic right now. But I just want to thank you for everyone for your participation.